Well, thanks for joining us. And a quick round of intros, though. Maybe, Stan, you want to start?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stan Kreydin. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Wyndham Worldwide Corporation. And we pride ourselves on sending people on vacation, ranging from hotels to timeshares to vacation rentals and everything in between. So very nice to be here.
My name is Dan Crowe. I'm the Chief Information Officer and EVP of Digital for WheelsUp, which I'll explain in a minute. I came to WheelsUp most recently. I was CTO at Weight Watchers, and a few years back I was CIO of AutoTrader.com, and I know the Landmark folks and have been to many of these events, and very glad to be here.
Excellent. So I'm Mark Fernandes. I'm a partner at Sierra Ventures. We're early stage venture capital. We focus on technology investing, mostly on the software stack. So as I thought about the topic for today, which just kind of trying to get a sense of what your organizations are like, right? We'll set some context in a second, but maybe just talk about your organizations, your infrastructure, just to set the context here.
Sure thing. So Wyndham Worldwide is a conglomeration of companies, really three separate business units, each with its own unique identity, a unique product portfolio, each with its own CEO, CFO, CIO, and respective IT teams. Across the corporate elements, right, there's in some layers a thick layer of shared services, and other layers a thin layer of shared services. So a lot of the infrastructure services and people have either direct or mixed mode relationships within the corporate element and also to their business units. So it's a lot of cross-cultural organizational challenges, certainly a large demographic from a workforce point of view, 22 different countries, every language you can possibly imagine. It's a pretty distributed workforce.
Okay.
There's about 40,000 overall associates within the company.
And maybe if I just drill down a little bit on that, what's the infrastructure like? I mean, are you dealing with a lot of legacy stuff, transitioning? You've been there for a little while now.
Yeah,
right?
I've been there for a while. I've been in the corporate role for a little over a year. It was a year on April Fool's Day, actually, as funny as that sounds. It's funny to me. Prior to that, I was with the various business units in various IT roles, running infrastructure, in some cases security, service delivery, and application development. The infrastructure is a pretty heterogeneous ecosystem, right? So we have heritage brands that we've had through acquisitions that are 60 plus years old, right? So you obviously inherit a lot of technology debt, also deep, rich culture, and a great, deeply ingrained product line with pretty specific prototypes and profiles of members or customers. Right, so they tend to have more aged infrastructure. So some mainframe capabilities, certainly traditional back office client server type technologies, a lot of on-premise, deeply integrated platforms that also speak to point of sale systems, right? So that's one extreme. The other extreme is we also grow through acquisition, notably around our vacation rental brands, right? The sharing economy. And we've been in the space for quite some time. A lot of the companies we acquire are more progressive. So a lot smaller organizations, a lot more nimble organizations. A typical IT individual is a full stack developer versus some of your traditional siloed sense where you got an infra person, you've got an app dev person, and some of those tend to be more cloud native, right? So you have a lot more nimbleness from a business point of view, and a different culture, right? So it really runs the gamut.
Right. And then you're the other end of the spectrum, right? Although some of your prior companies probably were more established.
Yeah, definitely.
But you're the other end of the spectrum right now, so.
We are. Just for those of you who may not know, WheelsUp is a 3-year-old startup. It's a private aviation membership company. We have 73 private planes that can take you anywhere in America. Fast growing, based here in New York. It epitomizes the on-demand economy. We can get you a plane through the app, 24 hours notice, guaranteed. So that's what we do. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's different than, say, a Weight Watchers, which is a much more legacy company that had a lot of the challenges, but also the scale that you're talking about. WheelsUp, it's, as I said, it's 3 years old, and digital is a huge part of our value proposition to the members. And we are native, and we do have a whole team of full stack developers. Our consumer-facing stuff is all. The back end is all open source, Java and whatnot, and the apps are all native. We have a set of Android apps and a set of iOS apps, and we're in native development. But we can move pretty fast. We don't have. It is amazing how much tech debt you can build in three years, but not like a legacy company. So I can't complain at all.
Yeah.
So we don't have as much of the tech debt, but we really our problem or challenge is scale and growth. We've got the tiger by the tail. We're growing 40 or 50% a year, or whatever, compounded. How are we going to scale that? It was similar to what an auto trader and some of these other companies that get established do. So it's all about architecting for growth, and hopefully you'll ask us some questions about that, and we can talk about it. Our infrastructure, it's all in the cloud. Cloud native. There's no point in putting in any kind of on-prem equipment for us. We were lucky enough that we were started in a time when you can do that. I'll contrast it with an auto trader, where when auto trader started in, let's say, year 2000, bought $200 million worth of equipment over a few years to get it established, whereas nowadays you can start something like WheelsUp and you don't have to do any of that. You're in AWS, you're in Rackspace, and that's all you need to do on an infrastructure perspective. So it's really about architecting it properly and getting the good developers, recruiting here locally. We're all based in New York, and building out like that. Oh, I have one more thing I have to say to Stan, though. I didn't get to tell you this yet. So you're talking about your diverse workforce. You have one new person in your workforce who started Monday in Charleston, which is my daughter, who started at the Wyndham Grand in Charleston in the event department. So I meant to tell you that.
I'll be sure to reach out and say hello. Nice.
You can talk during bonus season.
That's right.
Right. She's very junior. Keep an eye on her.
So, as we thought about this panel kind of driving productivity through mobile, we were thinking about two big divisions here, right? One is internal, right? And you think about your workforce, it's really changing. A couple of the panels this morning talked about the millennial workforce, different styles, all of that stuff. So, and then we can talk about the external customer-facing stuff, right, which is the on-demand economy. But on the internal side with collaboration, kind of how are you adapting to the new workforce? What are the things you're looking at? I mean, maybe I'll start with you, Stan. I mean, what have you done? Because collaboration is very different, email versus Slack. What are the things you're doing? What are the things you're thinking about that?
So a couple of things. We tend to look at it in two different ways, and we're kind of shifting more towards a more unified view versus some of the fragmented models that we adopted previously. Well, first, we have to understand our workforce, right? So our workforce consists of professional employees, desk workers, knowledge workers, right? But also housekeeping staff, right? And when you think about a profile, an information profile of what some of those individuals need access to and how you engage with them, right? Because employee and associate engagement is really relevant. That changes the way you communicate out to them, right? And if you look at that, the framework and the context is basically connecting users, right, with data, right, at the end of the day, right? So we've been taking a look, and we've done some neat stuff with unifying and integrating identity management more richly into the mobile ecosystem, such that we could then figure out, do we really want to drive towards enforcement of BYOD in some of our regions? Again, global company, right? When you're doing business in Germany or Holland or Denmark or France, you're going to have different considerations versus if you're just doing business in the U.S.
And you said 30,000 employees?
40,000.
40,000, right.
And some of those, it's bursting because sometimes we take on seasonal work, right?
Yep.
So some of our locations are highly seasonal, so there'll be a scaling workforce, right? So the average housekeeper, they don't care about email per se, right? But they care about health and benefits, understanding what's going on around them. How to enable and integrate socially, and how to integrate with our guests, right? Which is a big part of what we'd like to think sets Wyndham apart from some of our competition. So we started with looking at identities, and we're about midway through an enterprise project to start normalizing all the quote-unquote authenticated users into our mobile identity management platform, right? So that's kind of a big deal. It's relatively simple if you're a small company, but again, we're multiple business units, multiple countries, multiple languages, multiple cultures. So that's been pretty big for us. And the other piece of that is obviously securing it, right? I mean, it's funny, you can't be in one of these conferences without talking about security, and the joke is, what are you concerned about from a security point of view with mobility? It's everything. So there's a tight partnership with our Chief Information Security Officer, making sure that the policies are there, and that more importantly, now that technology is caught up with it, we can actually monitor for policy violations and take action, versus before is, you put a policy out there, somebody signs it, now you can actually work and enforce it and work to improve that situation.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you've kind of migrated over here? I mean, security is one thing, which is ongoing and all that, but just whether it's organizational, what were some of the lessons for the folks in the audience, both from a CIO perspective, but also from startups who sell into your organization?
I think organizational, and it's funny you hit the last part. So again, we acquire a lot of companies, and a lot of them are smaller, right? So they've got their own culture, their own way of working together. And we don't really want to kind of destroy that, because that's made that company who they are, and that's made them as profitable as they are. One of the biggest problems we had, specifically from a mobility point of view, is when people brought on their personal phones and said, all right, we'll subscribe to this policy, here's my phone. We're putting on a mobile device management platform. All of a sudden, well, wait a minute. You can't put anything on my phone, and you're going to read my email. You'll track me, and it's very clearly stated from a policy point of view. But the organizational change management of the mentality of, it may be your own personal device in some cases, right? But there's a way and a mechanism for the corporation to make sure that we secure the data within it. People had a hard time with that, right? The other side of the house, and we're working to get better at this, is creating an app store type experience. That way you could start normalizing and pushing cross business unit applications. Again, we're a heterogeneous set of business units, to try to drive a common thread throughout the entire employee ecosystem. That way there's some semblance of cross business unit collaboration, and then you could use some of the tools that we push down to kind of talk to one another and try to exchange ideas.
Dan, you're at the other end of the spectrum, right? In terms of
what's
your ecosystem like? What's your organization like? What's the day-to-day collaboration like? Because
everyone's mobile,
closer.
right?
Yeah, you're probably closer to the Snapchat, Facebook crowd, I think.
Yeah, we have kind of, I would say we have dual cultures, right? I mean, we're an aviation company with a lot of aviation veterans, heavy sales and marketing. We're entrepreneur-led. Kenny Dichter's our CEO. He's one of the top entrepreneurs. So there's that business entrepreneur culture. Within that, I'm building a digital culture, which I've tried to build in other places too, which is, these are the modern workers, right? A lot of millennials, a lot of people who want to work with the modern tools. They expect to have Slack and Jira and Confluence and all those things that digital shops use for the tools of the trade. So they want to communicate that way and collaborate that way. And we've set up all those tools for them, and it helps facilitate the agile process and those things. For the Salesforce and some other parts of the company, we're a Salesforce shop for sales and service automation, and we use Salesforce apps, and we have a Salesforce app. So a salesperson can kind of run their book of business off their mobile phone. That's what we do. What's member facing, we'll do native, as I said. But in terms of collaboration, we're young. Why not be digitized? Why not just have it all automated and all in the phone? And we do have to secure these devices. We've implemented two-factor authentication, and people moan about that a little bit. But as I can feel your pain on the change management. We don't have near the challenges that you do because of scale. But nevertheless, it's a similar thing. How can you put this AirWatch MDM on my phone? It's my phone. Of course you get that. But we've been able to get past that pretty well, because we put the member first, and we say, our members are high net worth individuals and celebrities, and we have got to protect their information. It's vital, and our employees understand that. So we've been able to get, I think, the change management that we need to infuse the security there.
How do you work with startups? I mean, you're a startup yourself, but maybe there's probably a few startups in the crowd here, right? How do you work with startups on this? What do you look for from them versus going to Microsoft and telling them, hey, I'll use Intune or VMware and using AirWatch? I mean, how do you work with startups there?
So I always try to avoid vendors and products. So I'll be generalized just because I don't want to tick anybody off, right? So we do quite a bit of work in not only in some of the business units, but also from a corporate point of view, right? So the first thing is making sure you've got some business challenges that you're trying to address, right? Versus just understanding that getting technology for the sake of technology, right? There's got to be an enablement to it. We'll meet with the portfolio companies. We'll fly out west, and there's certainly a number of them in New York as well. And we'll talk about what products and services they have, and more importantly, how they deliver and how they scale. Some of that you've got to also understand where in the financing process they are, right? Are we at the seed stage? Are we at the more mature stage? Or we're pre-IPO? Or do we just IPO, right? Because one of the things with being a large company is, our contract process isn't exactly the most easiest, which I'm sure many of you probably have very similar things around legal and information security and service delivery constructs. But that's a large concern, is you can go into business with a company that's awesome. They've got the funding, they've got a really tight management organization, a great value proposition. They go out, go live, they IPO, then there's brain drain, and before you know it, you've got a solution that can't scale. So we have to consider the long-term viability of the service, which is really now it's predominantly services versus products, right? So that entails into what those are, and then also how they're delivered and how they're scaled, and then how they're secured, right?
Yeah. Okay. How about you? I mean, maybe not so relevant today, but maybe with Weight
Well, certainly in
Watchers
prior lives, you
Yeah.
know, let's go back to the Weight Watchers example. We bought 3 startups in Silicon Valley. They were acquire hires. We put them in, we created a product development lab out there, and you know, these were small little things. We put them together, needed to preserve the culture, as you're saying, because nobody wants to work in that big corporate culture who came from the nimble startup. And then we scaled it out, and we had a kind of an East Coast, West Coast thing going, which was really good for us. I could see WheelsUp doing something like that someday. I'm always on the lookout for small startups that have a cool product or maybe some great talent or great IP or whatnot that can extend our offering or extend into adjacencies or help us expand in some other ways. So always on the lookout for that. We are a startup ourselves, but you know, we're you know, looking at C round now. We're maturing, so we don't want to lose any of that startup nimbleness. But we have to mature, and when we go partner with other companies, we have to represent that we've got a scalable process, and we've got security, and we've got all the things that partners care about. And we've been able to demonstrate that to date, but you know, we have to do that.
Right. Okay, so maybe we'll just switch to the external side of it now. I actually downloaded both your apps.
Yeah.
You know, yours is basic unless you sign up for the program.
Payroll,
I gotta give them a credit card, I guess, right? But you know,
I can take it after the session.
I looked at your app too, Stan, and it was kind of interesting to see because I'm a Starboard guy, right? I've used it to check in, to look at all, you know, get my room number, in fact, in some cases, right? But what are you seeing in terms of the innovation? There's a certain level of expectation right now, right? You're so used to the interface, you don't want the Outlook interface, you want the Facebook interface, right? There's a certain bar on UX that's been set, right? We had a session on that earlier. What are you guys doing in terms of thinking about kind of that external customer-facing interaction? What are you doing there? What are some of the best practices? What have you done on that front?
Yeah, I think I'll stick to one particular segment of one of our business units just because it's a bit more relevant, right? Is if you look in the vacation rental space, which is probably one of the more faster growing out there in the industry, right, with some of the competition that's out there. It's all about the life cycle of the customer, right? So it's pretty easy to go through an app. Yeah, you book a room. If you're in a hotel construct, you care about a 2-bedroom king at a certain property, and that's all there is to it, right? It's pretty simple. When you're in a vacation rental situation, right, you actually want to book room 15A because you like the way the owner furnished the place. And if that's not available, you're going to go someplace else, right? So there's a bit of a change there with respect to how you approach the reservations process, right? So there's some UI and UX and CX capabilities around there. More notably is there's the in-stay experience, right, which is getting a lot of attention now. It's integrating with a lot of the third-party applications for food and car hires and packages around skiing or surfing, around planes in some cases. So there's a lot of integration with external service providers. And the challenge there is always going to be when you have an API-based platform, you're only as good as your slowest API, right? So there's been a lot of conversations around how to normalize the data, and there's, without getting into too much detail, it's about how you normalize caching and figure out folks who are on the cellular network versus a wireless network, obviously. Exactly. And then the in-stay also includes food and beverage. We do a great deal of food and beverage activities, notably internationally. So that's part of the experience. When you're at some place with your kids, you don't really want to order. You just want an iPad, or you just want to swipe and you want to pay with your finger. I mean, that's by swiping, not by dipping it in blood. You could, depending on where you go. I don't judge. So that in itself also has a lot of UI capabilities. And again, security is a wrapper for all that, right? Hospitality is a pretty significant target for bad actors, whether it's nation states or sole bad actors. So goes back to the partnering and making sure that if you've had third-party developers in place or third-party point-of-sale platforms in place, you're doing some pretty introspective scanning, and in some cases it's fairly intrusive to the business, but you do the work up front versus all the nightmare that happens on the back end.
Right.
So external is tremendously important for us. I mean, mobile has enabled this business model of ours. I mean, we're an on-demand aviation platform. And
how much is done on mobile? Like how much of your business
probably
is done
a third.
on mobile? A third of your business is done.
Yeah.
How about you?
It depends which business you look at. In some cases, it's almost 90%.
90%.
Some of the newer,
like hotel bookings and
But mostly on the vacation rental side of the house, right? The
Okay.
hotels, it's about 50-50, depending on where you are in the world. And
that's probably in the last 3 years.
yeah, the last 3 years within the hotel space has been a tremendous amount of investment because Wyndham's won, last year #1 rated loyalty program in the world, right? With the Wind Wizard, the guy from Game of Thrones, which I forgot with the beard. They've been having a lot of investment as a result due to just the customer influx. But in some cases, we have business units that run their entire property management system on an iPad. And the call center agents literally use the iPad, and the people that reserve use the iPad. So it's a very seamless experience. Again,
And so you think 30% goes to what over time?
Well, I'm just talking about bookings, right?
Right.
So it depends. I mean, people they're still a little bit trained to pick up the phone and call. We're a very high-touch business
Yeah.
if our member wants it to be high-touch. Or it can be you're over here having a conversation and go, oh, man, I've got to get from Teterboro to Orlando tomorrow, tap, 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 and in a few taps, you've got a jet waiting for you
That's just
tomorrow.
Stan. That's what Stan.
Yeah, Stan's going to be doing
I
that.
know.
No, but that's
as long as
what it
somebody
is.
else is paying, I'm okay.
Right. So there's the basic book the airplane.
Right.
There's flight estimators. You can get on there and, how long will it take to get from point A to point B? And the thing about private aviation, you're not going to the, 100 major airports. There's 5,000 airports, and we can go to most of them with our various products. So there's a lot of variety there. And we put all of that in the app. Plus, we have our partners, too. So we have a whole lifestyle experience. We offer our members tickets at the suite in Madison Square Garden. You can go see that. You can just book it in the app, and there it is, 1, 2, 3. Or we also, obviously, you can do all the contact functions and all that. The app is a very important part of how our members access and consume our brand. You can, obviously, flying the plane is important too, but there's also experiences when you're on board. We have a product where you can talk and text on the plane. You can talk on your phone on the plane, which is pretty cool. People like that. So that you can access through your phone too. And so it's a huge area of expansion for us. So externally focused mobile development enables our business model. I wanted to talk about the partners a little bit. I mean, we have ground partners, we have catering partners, we have luxury vacation partners. One called Inspirato is our partner, and you can access these magnificent properties right through our app also. So that has been driving business for us too. You see a property like, oh wow, I want to go to this beautiful townhouse in Aspen. We went to one, it was very nice, right? You book the plane and the townhouse all in one, and then now you have this great vacation just like that. It's for a certain demographic.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody, but it's
Stan again.
it's good. Yeah, try it, you'll like it. Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, the way we view it in the investment side of the business, I mean, my last investment was a company in Toronto that's in the loyalty coalition. So think about air miles in Canada being applied to the millennial loyalty program, right? Exceedingly fast-growing company out in Toronto. There's a lot of innovation happening in Canada around this, but it's the way to disrupt an old industry, right? I mean, you're probably seeing this with Airbnb
Absolutely.
and with all of these different things, right? So that's, I think mobile has been a way to out-innovate everybody, right, and change things. But do you think the on-demand, since this section is supposed to be an on-demand, do you think we've overhyped it a little bit here?
No. Look, I'm going to jump in on this one if I may.
Yeah.
Because, I look at the private aviation space, and if you go to any general aviation airport, you're going to see a lot of metal around these runways. There's a plethora of underutilized assets, and we have not made it easy enough for people to get to them yet. I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg of on-demand in private aviation. It's kind of a pre-digital industry, but it's about to be disrupted by us and others. And I think it's the tip of the iceberg for on-demand in my space.
In the aviation space. But you talk about food delivery. I mean, a lot of stuff out there, a lot of VC money chasing that. So where if you look overall in the on-demand, where are we in that spectrum? Any thoughts?
I think my answers will always be depending on the region and the construct, at least from our business unit point of view, right? In some cases, it's very much on the initial curve where we're just now starting to monetize a lot of those opportunities. If you look at some of the more mature things that are out there, specifically on the vacation rental side of the house, I mean, that's on demand, right? You have an individual that has a product and you want to try to connect it with somebody that wants to use the product. question is how do you get that as quickly as possible, right? With as little cost and as little friction, such that it doesn't take much time to engage and then close the transaction. And how do you, again, contain the life cycle from that person? That way they're not just, I booked it, I'll show up on vacation, everything's great. So you want to make sure you curate that experience. And again, some of it is you're appealing to a certain demographic, obviously, right? In some cases. But how do you curate that experience with, again, what do you do with the in-stay experience? And some of it could be planes or helicopters or tours. And then how do you follow up after the fact? And to your point, it's not just aviation, it's hotel rooms, it's vacation rentals, it's any resource that's out there. There's tremendous opportunity. I think the one thing we didn't talk about is the impact on artificial intelligence and using really tight algorithms to understand utilization. Almost applying revenue management type
great point. That's a great
pieces
point.
That'll have those scenarios almost pre-calculated. And that's where I don't think there's been a ton of work there. If I'm mistaken, somebody please correct me afterwards, right? But nobody's really cracked that nut yet across the board.
In your space. It's very actively being pursued. We have 3 PhDs in our staff doing exactly that, trying to optimize the routing and apply these techniques, AI and OR techniques. That was a great point, yeah.
They left that for the smarter moderator after me. But I think we're out of time here, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.